Hey guys, welcome to a new video. Like, comment and subscribe if you enjoy. Without any further interruptions, enjoy the What If. Chapter 21, Hueco Mundo, Las Noches. Welcome back, Barragan. The kingly Arrancar thundered into the room, his wounded men quietly following him, nursing their grievous wounds. Along the walls above the pit were the many Arrancars of Aizen's army, all of them taking the sight of the wounded Espada and his men with glee. And sitting on what used to be Barragan's throne was the man himself, Aizen. Well, Barragan, Aizen spoke in his smooth, low voice while the old man looked up at him, the hatred in his eye ever present. Give us your full report. What report is there? Said a mocking voice from the side of the pit. Barragan turned to see Grimjow sitting against the wall with two of his fractions. The blue-haired man took the sight of the wounded Barragan and couldn't help but feel smug. It's clear that he failed miserably. Kinda pathetic for our number two. Don't push your luck, Grimjow, Barragan growled. Standing up, Grimjow glowered at his comrade. You were supposed to bring Halibel back here. How hard could it be when she's got a bun in her oven? Shut your mouth, Grimjow. Ggio Vega shouted, angry that the man would try to mock his liege. It was Ichigo Kurosaki who thwarted. Ggio was knocked to the floor by a backhand from Barragan. Quiet, you, Barragan growled in fury before stepping on Gio's hand, crushing it between his boot. A loser like you has not right to make excuses. Another voice made itself known. For once, I'm in agreement with Grimjow. Barragan turned to see the number 4 Espada, Ulquiorra, look down at him. You outnumbered your targets and the boy was clearly no match for you. And yet you still returned in failure. HMPH. Halibel tried to put up a fight but her condition made her easy to break, Barragan said confidently. And I crushed Ichigo Kurosaki like an ant between my thumbs. It was only because of his hollow power that he was able to wound me. Wound? Grimjow spat. More like he wrecked your shit. Sitting beside Ulquiorra, the number 10 Espada, Yami, chirped in. He's right, you know. You said you had him beat. Then how come you're a wreck and came back empty-handed? Grimjow, Ulquiorra, Yami, Aizen cut in, silencing his men with his calm voice. I believe we should let Barragan tell us what happened in full. The room became silent as Barragan gave them an account of what happened, not leaving out a detail. All of his men stared at the floor in shame when Barragan told Aizen of their crushing defeat, knowing full well that their master's punishment would be severe. When Barragan told them of Halibel and her declaration to break ties to Aizen, many of the Arrancars bristled in anger. Are you fucking serious? Grimjow seethed. She feels human. What garbage is that? Again, Ulquiorra was in agreement with Grimjow, an odd occurrence to happen twice in so many minutes. She is deluded. Halibel has clearly let her pregnancy affect her mind. She is a hollow. No matter how much she looks human, she is clearly not. Barragan continued his story. Aizen's eyebrow rose when he mentioned Ichigo's inner hollow taking over and the tremendous power boost he got. Yami smashed his fist into the ground, crushing the black tile. Are you kidding me? He shouted at Barragan. You had the brat dead to rights and you still left. Some king you are, he mocked. More like the king of cowards. In an instant Barragan vanished. Yami's eyes widened when a hand grabbed his throat and hauled him up. You wish to repeat that sentence? Barragan said with murder in his eye. I retreated because to prolong the battle would end in Karakura town's destruction. All of our plans would have become meaningless, he said, squeezing his grip. Yami gurgled as Barragan strangled him. Ulquiorra stood motionless beside them, not caring if Barragan killed Yami or not. Barragan, please release Yami. Hearing Aizen's command, Barragan reluctantly dropped Yami. Trash, he spat before turning around and returning to the pit. On the contrary, Yami, I find Barragan's actions acceptable. More so, Kazuki Urahara would have gotten involved. While I am confident in Barragan's strength, Kazuki is not to be trifled with. Aizen turned back to Barragan and gave him a nod, although Barragan despised him for it. I do not consider this a failure, Barragan. If anything, things happened better than I prepared. Barragan narrowed his eye as he stared at his leader. He sounds as if he expected me to return empty-handed. He couldn't have predicted everything that happened, could he? Now then, Aizen rested his head on his hand and thought about the present situation for a minute. Since Halibel and Ichigo will not join us by force, I believe I shall take a more direct approach. 2 days later, Karakura town. Ichigo opened his eyes, his body aching in places he didn't even knew he had. He groaned as he tried to sit up before a hand touched his shoulder. Keep still, Ichigo, you haven't fully recovered yet. The boy turned to see Halibel sitting next to him, back in her gigai. Halibel, you're okay. He breathed a sigh of relief. Thanks to you. If it had not been for your sacrifice I would be dead. She put a hand over her stomach, and so would our child. Ichigo looked down only to gap in shock when he saw Halibel's large stomach. It looked like she'd swallowed a large watermelon whole. You're that far along. How long was I asleep? 2 days. His eyes continued to stare at her stomach. Though she wore his mother's old maternity clothes, her stomach was quite prominent. Yes, I'm afraid that we have Barragan to thank for our child's sudden growth. His senescence power caused its gestation to accelerate. And after you saved me by giving me your energy, my body took it to continue to process. So when, any day now, Halibel lamented. Halibel. Taking his hand, Halibel lifted her shirt and put it on her pregnant tummy. Feel. As Ichigo's fingers spread out across her stretched skin, he felt something happen inside. Oh. She gasped. See, she kicks. Mother's intuition. She let go of Ichigo's hand and laid down on the bed next to him. Ichigo snuggled next to her and put his hand over her stomach to feel their baby's presence more. Ichigo, I don't know what to say, she said. You don't need to say anything. It was my choice to make, Halibel. All of it. He could see the pain in her eyes, the guilt of what Ichigo had endured because of her. I chose to give you my spirit energy. Just like I chose to become your student and chose to love you as the mother of our child. I don't regret anything. Once again Halibel could feel that warm sensation inside, the feeling of her heart melting from Ichigo's kind words. You truly are something special. She kissed him sweetly on the lips before they heard the door open up. I see you're awake, Isshin Kurosaki said as he brought in a tray of food. I was getting worried. After what that Arrancar did to you I was scared you'd never wake up. Memory came back to Ichigo and he remembered that it was his father that saved him before Barragan crushed his skull. Dad, you. Sitting down in a chair, Isshin crossed his arms and sighed. I suppose there's no point hiding it now. Like your girlfriend said, I'm as responsible for this as Kazuki. He looked down at the ground for a minute, gathering his courage before looking up. Yes, Ichigo, I am a soul reaper. The boy was silent as he processed this, staring down at the sheets. After a minute he finally spoke. I know. Isshin blinked. You knew. Looking up, Ichigo scowled. Dad, do you think I'm stupid? Zangetsu told me I had Soul Reaper's powers of my own after I lost the powers Rukia gave me. They had to come from somewhere. And I remembered that you never really told me about yourself. It was kinda obvious. The father could only chuckle. Halibel was right. You were smarter than I gave you credit for. Giving another sigh, he sat back in his chair. I'll tell you everything. Don't. Both Halibel and Isshin were shocked at Ichigo's refusal. Looking down at his bandaged hands, Ichigo balled them into fists. You had your reasons. I know that you didn't tell me for a good reason. So I can wait. He looked back up at his father. I'll wait until this is all over. Then you can tell me. Father and son stared at each other, the elder shocked at the maturity of the younger. Smiling, Isshin nodded and got up. All right, I'll leave you two alone for now. Make sure you eat, Ichigo. Halibel waited until Isshin left before speaking. Are you sure, Ichigo? She asked, confused at her lover's choice. He was ready to spill everything. I know, but right now I've enough to deal with without adding more to the pile, Ichigo sighed as he lay back on the pillow. I'll hear the truth when this is over. And then I'm gonna punch him. Laughing, Halibel laid back down and cuddled with him, feeling their baby kick again. The next day, Karakura Town, Park. How are you feeling? Sore. Everything still hurts. The couple walked along the small path, making a trip through a nearby park. After Ichigo had recovered enough to walk, Halibel invited him to walk with her. He protested since Halibel could give birth at any time, but she insisted, stating that she needed the exercise. After some small talk, Ichigo broke the ice. That Arrancar who attacked us, Barragan. You knew him. I did. The hand holding Ichigo's squeezed tightly as anger bubbled up inside her. Before Lord Aizen came along he was the king of Hueco Mundo. His powers were so vast that he considered himself a god. Barragan brought countless hollows under his command. He tried to make me and my friends submit to him as well. Did you? Of course not. But Barragan would not tolerate my presence and told me to leave his sight. Ichigo deadpanned. That doesn't sound that bad. Stopping, Halibel looked at him and scowled. You underestimate his power and his vanity. He considered the whole of Hueco Mundo as his palace. To him, the sky was his palace's ceiling and everywhere that fell upon his gaze was a part of it. When he told me to leave his sight, he meant that I had to go someplace he couldn't see me. Was he that powerful? Ichigo asked, feeling very afraid. You only got a taste of his power when he came here. Halibel looked at the ground sadly. He considers himself a god for good reason. He's ranked higher than I among the Espada ranks, after all. The truth of the matter is that if your friends had not arrived when he did, Halibel turned away and let the implication sink in. The fear that had been building in Ichigo's heart spread. Is there really no beating him? Only two others I know are stronger, Aizen and the number 1 Espada, Stark. I suggest we consult your shopkeeper friend on this. He might know of a way to best him. Taking Halibel by the hand, Ichigo guided her over to the shade of several trees. He took a few steps away and sighed. Halibel, there he is. Halibel blinked as 3 blurs appeared from out of nowhere and barreled into Ichigo. The injured boy was assaulted from all sides as his attackers started to beat the crud out of him. Kill this bastard. You'll pay for what you did. Take this, you asshole. Halibel was alarmed but quickly recognized the 3 voices. Apache. Mila rose. Sung Sun. She called out, standing up. Enough. The 3 stopped pounding Ichigo and turned to face their master. Curled up in the fetal position, Ichigo looked up to see just who was attacking him. It didn't surprise him that they were Arrancars, all women. Their appearances were as wild and exotic as their master. One had blue hair and heterochromia, wearing a shirt that exposed her midriff and had a horn fragment. The tallest of the 3 reminded Ichigo of Yoruichi with her dark skin and long hair. She was built and wore a revealing outfit which reminded Ichigo of an Amazon, her mask fragment a hairpiece and necklace. The last of the 3 was the shortest, wearing a modest dress and had long, olive green hair, complemented by her hairpiece mask fragment. The 3 bent their knee in front of Halibel. Master Halibel, Apache started. We're so glad you're okay. Why are you here? The Espada demanded. I ordered you to hide. We did, Master Halibel. Mila Rose looked up before continuing. But when we heard Barragan came here to take you back we had to come and make sure you were all right. Yes, Sung Sun stood up and grabbed Ichigo by the hair, the boy busy reaching for his combat pass in his pocket. And to make this boy pay for what he did to you. Halibel scowled. Ichigo did nothing to me. Release him, she ordered. For the second time this week, Ichigo hit the ground with an, ow. And sat up. Halibel, these are your fractions. Yes. Apache, Mila Rose, Sung Sun. Apologized to Ichigo. The 3 turned and glared at Ichigo for a moment before they bowed in apology. We're sorry, they said in unison. Standing up straight, Mila Rose turned back to Halibel. Master, are you all right? Her eyes went to Halibel's pregnant stomach. Your baby. We had a harrowing encounter with Barragan but we're fine. Both Ichigo and myself. She saw the curious stares and rolled her eyes. Yes, you can feel. Ichigo breathed a sigh of relief as the 3 admired their master's unborn child still within her. Well, that's one crisis averted. Master Halibel, may we stay with you? Apache begged. We wish to protect you and your child. Wait, Ichigo protested. We don't have enough room for 3 of you at my place. I wasn't asking you, you ass. Apache shouted. It's your fault she's pregnant and had to flee Hueco Mundo. Halibel twisted her ear and silenced her. All of you, listen to me. Ichigo is not at fault. Everything was my choice. She and her fractions sat down and she thought about it. I don't want you to return to Hueco Mundo. Now that Aizen knows I'm pregnant and won't go back, he'll use whatever is necessary. While Halibel and her friends pondered where the 3 could stay, Ichigo felt his phone buzz. Flipping it open, he saw that he got a text from Kazuki. Come to the shop, now. Ichigo felt a wave of foreboding as he read the short text. Pocketing his phone, he turned to his girlfriends and her comrades. I gotta go. Kazuki says he needs me. Will you be alright? I'm fine. I'll take them home with me and talk to your father about where to give them shelter. Knowing his father was going to lose it when Halibel brought 3 beautiful girls home, Ichigo groaned and turned away, heading for Kazuki's shop. Reaching the candy shop, Ichigo stepped inside and saw Tessai manning the cash register. Before he could speak, Tessai pointed to the living room in the back. In there. The boss needs to speak to you immediately. Ichigo nodded and walked down the hallway. Reaching the door, he knocked. Kazuki, Yoruichi. Come in, Ichigo. Opening the door, Ichigo stepped inside, and almost choked on his tongue in shock. Kazuki and Yoruichi were indeed inside the living room. But sitting with them was every single captain of the Soul Society. Ichigo Kurosaki, head captain Yamamoto addressed. His eyes stared at the youth with the same intensity as the rest of the captains. You have much to explain. Chapter 22, Urahara's Shop. All Ichigo could hear was the pounding in his heart as 10 sets of eyes locked onto him. He knew it was only a matter of time until he would be forced to face the music for his relationship with Halibel. It was just a matter of when, not if. But when had just became right now. The boy was frozen with fear as he stared at the 10 captains, the Soul Reapers crowding Kazuki's living room. The shopkeeper himself sat over by the window, Yoruichi sitting next to him. The looks on their faces told Ichigo all he needed to know. This was not going to end well. The captains had formed a wide circle in the middle of the room, the table pushed to the side. Ichigo scanned the faces of the various captains and saw how grave their expressions were, particularly the head captains, Soifons and Byukuyas. Ichigo Kurosaki, head captain Yamamoto addressed. You have much to explain. Sit, he commanded, pointing to the center of the circle. For a moment, Ichigo was frozen stiff, but he quickly shook off his terror and walked forward. Yukataki and Kyoraku moved aside to let Ichigo through. Ichigo sat down in front of the old man. He looked over at Yoruichi and Kazuki for some kind of solace. While Kazuki's eyes were unreadable from beneath his bucket hat, Yoruichi's kind eyes told Ichigo to be strong. Why are you all here? Ichigo asked. While the old man sat in silence, Mayuri Kuretsuchi, sitting behind Ichigo, merely sneered. Really, you haven't the slightest idea why we would all come to this dismal dwelling. Oh, I think you do, he snickered. Ichigo, Byakuya interjected. Ichigo turned to face the man. The man's eyes were narrowed and stoic, as if he was trying to piece together a puzzle. Let's not dance around the issue. We know. Ichigo swallowed hard. No, you mean, about the hollow. The head captain spoke up, turning Ichigo's attention back to him. Ichigo Kurosaki, we have come here today to discern whether or not you are an ally to be trusted or an enemy to be eliminated. Ichigo's face turned sour. An enemy? You think I'm on Aizen's side? He gestured to the bruises on his face. One of his Arrancar almost beat me to death. You think I did this to myself? It does not matter what we think, only what we know, Yamamoto said, his slant eyes opening up to let Ichigo see his ancient eyes. Ichigo crossed his arms. You don't know anything about me. Mayuri chimed in again. Oh really? When the boy turned around to look at him, Mayuri merely leered at him with his crazy smile. Very well then. Why don't we all go over what we know about you, Ichigo Kurosaki? Mayuri, you, hush, boy, Mayuri hissed before he started to count off his fingers. Let's start off with the fact that we know that moments after your chance encounter with Rukia Kuchiki, a hollow immediately attacked you. We know that since you became a Soul Reaper, you have been under the secret guidance of an Arrancar, one of Sosuke Aizen's minions. We know from Rukia Kuchiki's testimony that night after night you've drugged her to meet with this Arrancar to receive her instructions. Rukia, we questioned her when we learned the truth about your secret, Captain Yukataki said. In addition, Mayuri continued, we know that through your tutelage under this hollow you've gained strength that exceeded that of a mere substitute, even before Kazuki Urahara helped you restore your powers. We know that Sasuke Aizen used you as a distraction during his little subterfuge, in order to steal a power that you were trying to steal yourself. I was trying to rescue Rukia. Not the Hogyoku. In this case, to save one was to save the other. He was aware of your existence, and knew not only when but how you would arrive. We know that Aizen left you alive when he could have very well killed you on top of the Sokyoku hill. Oh, and we know that the Arrancar is not only romantically involved with you but carries your child. Not only does she live with you, but you now have access to reach Sousk Aizen at a moment's notice. So tell us, Ichigo. He smiled wickedly. Does that sound about right? Ichigo couldn't help but go pale. When Mayuri put it like that, it really sounded damning for him. Unohana put a hand on Mayuri's shoulder, quieting him. Captain Kuretsuchi, while everything you said was the truth, I believe we should hear Ichigo's side of the story. Behind Ichigo, Soy Fan scoffed. What's to hear? Mayuri summed it up pretty good. Her eyes gleamed with malice as she stared at Ichigo. He's clearly in league with Aizen. The facts are clear. Yamamoto interrupted, quieting the quarreling captains. Be that as it may, Captain Soy Fan, I believe that we should hear what Ichigo has to say for himself. Ichigo, he addressed, the evidence does not speak well for you, as Captain Kuretsuchi pointed out. However, in light of all that has happened, I feel that I must give you the opportunity to explain yourself. We cannot act rashly anymore. Not when Sousk Aizen is involved. But I will warn you now, his eyes narrowed, showing cold fury in his withered expression, do not attempt to deceive us or attempt to do something foolish. You are standing on the edge of a knife. I am giving you one chance to proclaim your innocence. I do not need to explain what will happen if I find you to be on the side of the enemy. It was then that Ichigo noticed that all 10 captains, even Unohana and Yukitake, had a hand on their zanpakutos. Ichigo felt cold sweat drip down the side of his face. If the head captain gave the word, the captains would pounce onto Ichigo and turn him into a pincushion. He had his combat pass in his pocket, but he knew that even if he had the time to pop out of his human form, even with the help of Kazuki and Yoruichi, the odds were not in his favor if the captains found him guilty. I don't have anything to do with Aizen. Byakuya leaned back, his hand kept firmly on Senbon Sakura. Then prove it, Ichigo. I have convinced everyone to give you the benefit of the doubt. Ichigo turned to the captain, surprised that Byakuya of all people was the one to give him the chance to explain himself. Tell us the truth. Sighing, Ichigo began his tale, starting the night that he met Rukia. The captains listened quietly as Ichigo explained how he met Halibel, how he trained with her off and on, and how she was able to help him avenge his mother by bringing Grand Fisher to him. When pressed, Ichigo confessed that he did fall in love with her and that they did have intercourse right before he left for the Soul Society, which led to her becoming pregnant. Ichigo didn't know how long he talked. All he knew was that he was scared. Under the scrupulous eyes of so many powerful captains, he wasn't feeling like the strong soul reaper he was. As Ichigo finished his tale, he turned back to the head captain. I swear I never met Aizen until Rukia's execution. I'd never even heard of him until then. Soy Fan found this all hard to believe. Are you seriously telling us that you spent 2 months together with this hollow and never once told you who she served? What kind of fools do you take us for? Like Mayuri said, Rukia shows up on his doorstep and a hollow just out of the blue attacks you, despite you claiming you've never seen a hollow before. Not only are you a liar but a poor one at that. Soy Fan, that's enough. The short captain blushed when Yoruichi suddenly walked over to the circle, glaring at her former subordinate. Lady Yoruichi. Kazuki and I already had this talk with Ichigo. We've already concluded that he's telling the truth. She turned to the head captain. Yes, Ichigo was trained by an Arrancar. Yes, he even fell for her, but he is not our enemy. And besides, what about the Arrancars that came to drag Halibel back to Hueco Mundo? Barragan beat Ichigo within an inch of his life. Are you telling me that was just some show? Lady Yoruichi. All eyes turned to the small Captain Hitsugaya, who'd remained silent up until now. While I don't fully believe that Ichigo is in league with Aizen, we must also harbor the possibility that Halibel is acting on his behalf. Now that she's with child, Ichigo is completely vulnerable to his influence. We already discussed that, added in Kazuki, who was busy sipping tea. Maybe you have, but I think we all deserve to hear it from Ichigo. Ichigo, his aquamarine eyes stared at the boy intently. Answer us this, If you were forced into a situation where Aizen made you pick your child or your friends and family, which would you choose? What kind of question is that? Ichigo shouted. Answer the question. Ichigo could only ball his hands into fists and stare at the floor. I don't know. Toshiro sighed. I see. Yamamoto spoke next. Since we are on the subject, there is a matter that is just as serious to consider. You may not have any relation to Aizen, but you are a Soul Reaper, Ichigo Kurosaki. It is your sworn duty to exterminate all hollows that would seek to do harm to the inhabitants of both the Soul Society and the world of the living. Despite knowing this, you not only allowed yourself to be trained by a hollow, an Arrancar at that, but you began a relationship with her and even impregnated her. This is a serious offense. A love between a Soul Reaper and hollow is not only unbelievable, it is downright sacrilege. Ichigo glared at the man, hating how he reduced Halibel to just another mindless hollow. Halibel isn't just a hollow, he said defiantly. She's special. She's unlike anyone I've met before. He looked down at the floor again. She might be a hollow, but she's more human than anyone I've met. And she's helped me far more than anyone else, even when she had no reason to. And besides, he looked up and stared Yamamoto in the eye. A love between a human and a hollow isn't forbidden, is it? Yamamoto tilted his head back. The other captains, who'd murmured to themselves while Ichigo was talking, all went silent. They could tell that the time for talking was over. Now all that was left was for Yamamoto to pass his judgment upon Ichigo. Both Yoruichi and Kazuki waited with bated breath. Even with all Ichigo had said, what would the old man's decision be? Finally, the ancient Soul Reaper lifted his head. Very well then. Ichigo Kurosaki, while you are no longer trustworthy, I find that your words do not have any deception behind them. And while your history with this hollow may be suspect, you are still a much-needed asset for the battle against Aizen. However, his eyes once again turned fiery as he gripped his cane. Consider this a stay of execution. If for any reason we find even the slightest hint that you are colluding with Sasuke Aizen, you will die. We will be keeping a close eye on both you and your hollow friend while she is still with child. But mark my words. Yamamoto moved with such speed that Ichigo didn't even realize he had a blade at his throat until a sliver of blood began to trickle down his neck. He held his breath as the powerful old man towered over him. A union between Soul Reaper, even a substitute, and an Arrancar can only create a monstrosity. If your child poses a threat to the Soul Society, it will be disposed of. If you try to stop us, you will die with the child and its mother. Silence, boy, Yamamoto threatened. You were in no position to bargain. You lost your path of retreat the moment you accepted this woman's offer to become her pupil. I speak for the 13 court guard squads. As a deputy on our behalf, that includes you. Which means my word is law. Understand? Ichigo remained silent, glaring up at the old man. However, when he heard 9 sets of swords being unsheathed, he soon found himself surrounded by all 10 captains, their swords pointing right at him. It sent a very clear message to Ichigo. His precarious position had only become more perilous. I understand. The head captain nodded to the other captains who all sheathed their swords. We will take our leave then. However, I will keep Captains Kuchiki, Unohana, Hitsugaya and Soifan as well as their respective lieutenants here in Karakura town to prepare the necessary measures for our battle as well as to keep an eye on you. His sword transformed into a cane and he walked away from the terrified Ichigo. Kazuki and Yoruichi, both of whom were sweating buckets as the tension in the room grew, let out a sigh of relief once Toshiro left and closed the door behind him. Pouring himself some more tea, Kazuki took off his hat and wiped his sweaty brow. Well, that went better than expected. Yoruichi crouched down next to Ichigo and pressed a rag on the cut on his neck. You all right, Ichigo? She asked, although she knew that even someone as strong as Ichigo had to be terrified out of his wits. That was worse than I expected, Ichigo said, taking deep breaths. He felt exhausted, like he'd gone through a gauntlet only to barely crawl over the finish line. I was terrified they were going to kill me. Kazuki moved the table back to the center of the room and passed a cup of tea over to Ichigo. Drink. Take a breath and try to calm down. It's over. For now, at least. Ichigo drank a cup of tea and then a second one. By the time he finished the third one, his hands finally stopped shaking. I'm surprised they even gave me the chance to explain. I'm amazed that it was Byakuya who gave you the chance, Kazuki noted. When they suddenly showed up on my doorstep and demanded to see you, I was worried. And when Miyuri painted a rather unsavory picture of you, I was all but convinced that the head captain would pronounce you guilty. How'd they know about all that? I mean, I know that Rukia must have told them a lot, but I have a few ideas. But for right now, just be glad you were able to avoid being executed by the skin of your teeth, Kazuki warned. I did warn you what might happen when they discovered Halibel, Ichigo. I know, but I didn't think they'd find out so soon. Yoruichi crossed her arms and sat back. It must have been when Barragan and his men showed up. So many people battling in one place had to catch their attention. Indeed, Ichigo, my advice would be to go home and rest. Just remember, he pointed a finger at the boy. You have to walk on eggshells from now on. Now that the captains are onto you, you have to play it razor, and I mean razor, straight with us if we're to help you. I know. Thanks guys for sticking by me, Ichigo said with a small smile. I was worried I got you two in trouble as well. We're already fugitives from the Soul Society, Ichigo. We're used to being under fire. Nodding, Ichigo thanked the pair and got up. He left the shop and headed home. When he arrived, he found it empty. In the kitchen he found two notes. One was from his father, stating that he and Yuzu were going to Karen's soccer game. The other was from Halibel, which said that she was trying to find shelter for the Trace Bestia. Slumping up the stairs, Ichigo wished that this was all just a bad dream. I'm aching all over. I got the crud beat out of me by Halibel's friends. And now the Soul Society knows about Halibel and me. What am I going to do? He pressed his forehead against the door to his room. It seemed so long ago when he was just a normal teenager who just so happened to see ghosts. This day can't possibly get any worse. Ichigo opened the door to his bedroom, and his day suddenly got very, very worse. The boy stared in abject horror when he saw who was in his room sitting on his bed. Hello, Ichigo, Aizen greeted with a sly smile. I was hoping to have a word. Is this a bad time? Chapter 23, Ichigo's bedroom. Ichigo couldn't breathe. He stood still, as if time had frozen around him. The sound of his heart thumping in his chest drowned out everything else. Sitting there, on his bed, was his enemy, the man who'd caused so much chaos, Aizen. The man sat on the edge of his bed. Instead of the vestments he'd worn as a captain, the man was wearing a black robe that wrapped around him. Why don't you come in? The man said in his smooth, low voice. This is, after all, your room. His face as pale as snow, Ichigo entered the room and closed the door behind him, locking it. He knew that he was in a dangerous position, but he didn't want his sisters to come in and be in even more danger. Aizen continued to quietly observe Ichigo, a small smile on his face. I hear you are going to be a father soon. I suppose congratulations are in order, he said, his tone like a teacher praising his student. Anger started to boil Ichigo's blood. After all the man had put him and Halibel through, he didn't want any praise from him. I don't know what you want, he glared. But get off my bed. Chuckling, Aizen strangely complied, standing up to face the young man. As you wish. Slowly, Ichigo's hand crept towards his pocket, to the combat pass. If he could grab it, if he could get into his Soul Reaper form, maybe, just maybe. But Aizen's smooth voice put an end to such thoughts. I wouldn't try, Aizen said, his smile not dropping. I am here to talk, Ichigo Kurosaki, and only talk. If I wanted to hurt you, his eyes darted over to the direction of Urahara's shop, I wouldn't even need to lift a finger. Tell me, he gestured to the black cloak he was wearing, do you know what this is? I'm guessing it's not your latest fashion statement, Ichigo retorted. Again, Aizen gave a light chuckle. Far from it. This is a creation from your friend Kazuki Urahara. It cloaks one's spiritual pressure. All I'd need to do is remove it. His eyes narrowed and his voice took a much darker tone, and my spirit energy would be sensed by all those around me. Ichigo stood still as Aizen let the threat sink in. It was true, he couldn't feel the man's presence despite Aizen standing 5 feet away from him. If Aizen took off the cloak, then everyone would know that Aizen was in Ichigo's house, including the captains. Yamamoto's words crept into his ear like a slithery earwig. If for any reason we find even the slightest hint that you are colluding with Sasuke Aizen, you will die. If the captains discovered Aizen in Ichigo's room, there would be nothing Ichigo could say to dissuade them from believing him to be an enemy. Aizen saw the fear in Ichigo's eyes and knew that Ichigo understood the perilous position he was in. I trust that you will keep your combat pass in your pocket. And even if you did draw it, his lips formed a thin smile. I believe our last encounter in the Soul Society showed the difference in skill between me and you. As the frightened look on Ichigo's face grew, Aizen held up a hand to calm him down. Relax. I told you, I am not here to fight, merely talk. It was all Ichigo could do to contain his panic. He didn't know what to do. His enemy was right in front of him and he had no way of defending himself. And even if he did, all Aizen would need to do was reveal himself and the captains would do the rest of his work for him. He tried but failed to keep the fear out of his voice. What do you want? Walking over to a chair by the desk, Aizen sat down and gestured for Ichigo to do the same. As Ichigo sat down on his bed, Aizen leaned back in his chair and smiled. Ichigo, I want you to join me, he said bluntly. Ichigo gaped at the man, struggling to understand what he'd just heard. You want me to join you? He repeated. That's right, you, Halibel and your newborn child. Balling his hands into fists, Ichigo glared at the man. What are you talking about? Why in the world would I join you? As the color returned to his face, he remembered what Halibel had told him, what Aizen was planning to do. She'd informed him of Aizen's grand scheme after he'd recovered from Barragan's beating. You plan on destroying Karakura town. That's right. Aizen nodded. I plan on destroying Karakura town to forge the Okayan, he said, talking about mass murder like he was talking about the weather. And I want you to join me. Why on earth would I? If you do, Aizen interrupting him, I will spare your family and your friends. And more importantly, Halibel can give birth in peace. Ichigo continued to glare. How in the world can I trust anything you have to say? Because everyone in the Soul Society trusted you, and look where it got them. Aizen's smile widened by a hair, yet it made him look all the more menacing. You can't. But think about this, Ichigo. The Soul Society views you as a rogue element. Their opinion of you is hardly better than me. To them, you're merely a military asset, one whose allegiance is within question. Sitting back in his chair, Aizen crossed his arms. Let me pose to you a hypothetical, Ichigo. Suppose the captains defeat me. What then? You'll no longer be of any use to them. And more importantly, what do you will happen when Halibel gives birth and your progeny is more hollow than human? Ichigo remained silent, not knowing what to say. I am offering you a way out. All you need to do is agree to join me. I'll forgive Halibel for her insubordination and she can give birth in the safety of Las Noches. Safety. Ichigo got off the bed and glared at the man. Your espadas want to kill Halibel. Barragan will kill her if she ever went back. Barragan will not go against me. He knows the price for insubordination, Aizen simply said. Standing up, he looked Ichigo in the eye. Well, Ichigo, I've made my offer. What do you say? The first thing that Ichigo wanted to say was, hell no. But he kept silent. He knew that he was caught between a rock and a hard place. He remembered his crushing defeat at the hands of both Aizen and Barragan. He couldn't deny it. He was scared. He didn't know if he was strong enough to protect Halibel and their child, from both the captains and Aizen. Aizen saw the hesitance in Ichigo's eyes and his smile widened. He knew he had Ichigo and it wouldn't take much to tip him over the edge. But he would be patient. Very well, take your time. One way or another, you will come to my side, he told the boy. He raised a hand and summoned a garganta. Think about my offer. When you come around, I'll know, he told the boy before walking through the void. Before the portal closed, Aizen turned around and looked back at Ichigo. Oh, and congratulations on becoming a father. Ichigo watched the villain disappear in front of him before his legs gave out, too exhausted and terrified to continue standing. He took deep breaths as he tried to calm down, but it was a failed gesture. He didn't know how long he remained there, slumped on the floor. An minute, an hour. All he knew was that by the time the door opened up and Halibel entered, Ichigo was still where Aizen had left him. Alarmed by Ichigo's position, Halibel rushed to his side. Ichigo. What happened? You look terrible. His lover's words snapped Ichigo out of his terror. He looked up and hugged Halibel, pressing his face into her pregnant belly. I don't know what to do, he confessed, shaking as Halibel wrapped her arms around him. Once again he didn't feel like a powerful soul reaper. He felt like the 15-year-old boy who was in way over his head with no way out. Just breathe, the teacher told her student. Collect your thoughts. You're safe, Ichigo. Closing his eyes, Ichigo listened to the sound with Halibel, the second heartbeat inside of her, shining like a precious ember. The sound at his child's heart beating inside Halibel comforted Ichigo and calmed him down. I don't know what to do. I don't know how to protect you and our child. What happened? Halibel continued to hold him while he repeated today's events, his close shave with the captain's and Aizen's offer. I see. Halibel let go of Ichigo and helped him onto his feet, walking him over to the bed. That is most distressing. Sighing, Ichigo looked over at Halibel. Halibel, I don't know what to do. The captains don't trust me. And I can't trust Aizen. For all I know, even if I did accept Aizen's offer, the other Espada will kill all three of us. True, we all swore allegiance to Lord Aizen, but loyalty isn't what drives us. Even if he forgives me, the other Espadas won't. Yami, Grimjow or especially Barragan will try to kill us. On the other hand, she patted her pregnant belly, even if the captains succeed and kill Lord Aizen, they may decide that we're too much of risk. And they're right, she looked down at their child. I don't know what our child will become. Will it be more Soul Reaper? Or Hollow? Ichigo was silent for a long minute before he took hold of Halibel's hand. Halibel, is it okay to admit when you're afraid? Halibel squeezed. There is something that I tell my fractions, fear is necessary to grow. If you fear the captains and Espadas, then our course is clear. She squeezed his hand tighter. We will become stronger than them. All of them. The woman's strong words soothed Ichigo's soul and he smiled. Halibel almost had a way to make the hardest questions have the simplest answers. Halibel, do you think you can teach me how to control my hollow? I told you I would. And I will. She stood up and held out her hand. We have no time to lose. I will teach you now. Now, Ichigo blinked as he stood up. But, won't it be too much for you and the baby? He warned. We do not have time to wait. The captains may decide to take action against you at any moments. As for your concern for me, her eyes hardened. I am strong, and so is our child. Whatever happens we will handle it. And no matter what happens, you and I will face it together. Nodding, Ichigo followed Halibel out of the bedroom. Where are we going? The training ground. Not there. Too exposed, Halibel told him as they went down the stairs. We will go to your shopkeeper friend. By the way, what happened to your friends? I asked your friend to help out. She agreed to let them stay in her apartment so long as they're on their best behavior. She, you mean Orihime? Quite. Oh dear, Ichigo could only imagine what Orihime was going through with 3 violent new roommates. That's not going to end well. Chapter 24, Urahara Shop. Ah, Mr. Kurosaki, Ms. Halibel, Kazuki Urahara greeted as the pair entered the shop. You're back sooner than I expected. Hey, Kazuki, Ichigo said as he walked into the shop, Halibel's hand in his. Mind if we talk to you? Nodding, Kazuki gave a glance to Tessai. Watch the shop, he ordered his friend before gesturing for the couple to join him. He guided the two to a spare room and closed the door behind them. What's up, Ichigo? Halibel spoke first. Things have progressed even worse than we thought. Narrowing his eyes, Kazuki looked at the pair and knew that something horrible happened in the short time Ichigo had left the shop. What happened? As quickly as he could, Ichigo told Kazuki of Aizen's visit. Kazuki listened and nodded once he finished speaking. I see. It looks like the walls are closing in on you too. I'm going to help Ichigo tame his hollow. May we use your space beneath your shop? Halibel requested. Kazuki was silent, a stern look on his face as he looked over at the pregnant woman, his eyes looking down to her belly. Are you sure that's wise? Your condition. I will bear it, Kazuki, the Arrancar said with resolution in her voice. If Ichigo is to have a chance, he needs this. Halibel, you could go into labor at any second, Kazuki warned. And with the captains here, If you go into labor and they see your child, he let the implication linger. If they want to hurt my baby, Halibel's hand balled into a fist, they'll have to go through me. I am an espada for a reason. The shopkeeper looked at the woman before nodding. He knew that she wasn't bluffing and suddenly felt a little admiration for the woman. No wonder Ichigo loves you, he muttered. All right then, I'll help you, but fair warning. The captains are down below too. They'll no doubt want to watch this to keep an eye on you too. I'll go let them know so they don't try to stab you on sight. Kazuki turned to leave before he remembered something. Oh, and Ichigo, you might want to call Mr. Sarutora. Chad, why? He asked me earlier to help train him. I figured that you two could train once you've mastered your holofication. That will not be necessary, Halibel interjected. Once Ichigo has control over his inner hollow, his friend won't be able to keep up. Ichigo looked at his lover, hurt for her callous attitude towards his dear friend. But, she quickly said, glancing over at Ichigo, if he needs sparring partners, my fractions will be more than suitable. Ichigo thought about it and decided that maybe Chad being trained by the Tres Bestia could be a good thing. Okay, I'll go call Chad. Make sure you call Orihime and tell her to bring my girls. Her lover and Kazuki left the room, leaving Halibel alone. Turning towards the window, Halibel looked up at the sky before looking down at the baby in her belly. She put a hand over her stomach and could feel her child within. Whatever happens, I'll protect you. That remains to be seen. Turning around, Halibel saw a young boy enter the room, his appearance just as bizarre as hers. Despite his small stature, he still wore a captain's coat, his white hair a sharp contrast to his bright green eyes. Captain Hitsugaya, Halibel deduced, scowling. You know who I am? The captain asked as he sat down in front of her. Aizen informed us of the captains who rule the Soul Society, Halibel explained. Why are you here, Captain? Toshiro cocked his head to the side, as if he wasn't quite sure of that himself. After a few seconds he finally responded, I wanted to see the hollow that Ichigo was so determined to protect. He remembered the meeting the captains had with Ichigo and how the boy struggled to answer his question about whether or not he'd protect his friends or Halibel and their child. The captain couldn't deny that he was curious about the Arrancar. Never in the Soul Society's history had anyone done something as insane as fall in love with a hollow, and he wanted to try to deduce what it was that made Ichigo so protective of the woman. Soul Reaper and Hollow locked eyes, both trying to get the measure of the other. Halibel knew of this child. Aizen had told her that he was considered a prodigy among the Soul Reapers in the same light as Jin Ichimaru. And yet, despite the boy's youthfulness, there was a certain wisdom in his eyes that told her that the boy earned the coat he wore. Sitting back in her chair, Halibel tilted her head back. You believe that I am working under Aizen's orders in order to mentally trap Ichigo into siding with him, correct? That is the assumption most of the captains have. But Ichigo seems determined to defend you. I wanted to understand why. He loves me, Captain, she said plainly. And I love him. When Toshiro blinked in surprise, she raised an eyebrow. Something wrong. It's just, I've never heard a hollow speak of love before. Toshiro nodded. It is a human emotion. Hollows by their very nature are incapable of it, he said, pointing out the contradiction. Yes, I am a hollow, but I have never felt like most of my brethren, even when I was a Vasto Lord, she confessed, recalling her life when she was a pure hollow. And I believe that becoming an Arrancar, becoming more like a Soul Reaper, helped me become able to feel human emotions again. And even if you don't believe it, what of it? She glared at the boy with stern eyes. Ichigo is the only person who matters to me. Well, for the moment. She patted her pregnant belly. Soon there will be two people who matter most. Sitting in his chair, Toshiro felt a little awkward in the presence of this woman, this hollow. Her demeanor, her spiritual pressure and her killer presence she commanded. Everything about her screamed that she was a hollow inside and out. And yet, like Ichigo had said, she seemed surprisingly human. He began to understand what Ichigo meant when he said that she was more human than most. However, Toshiro still knew he had to be on guard. Even pregnant and inside a Gigai, Toshiro knew that this was a dangerous woman. Had she not chosen to stay with Ichigo and instead fought the Soul Society, he'd no doubt that the two would most certainly cross blades. I see. He stood up and politely bowed. I'll take my leave then. I'll need to inform the other captains about what you and Ichigo intend to do. You do that. Toshiro left the room, leaving Halibel alone. Sighing, the Arrancar stood up and pushed herself out of her Gigai, having the natural ability to knock souls out of physical bodies. Back in her masked, white-clad form, Halibel saw her reflection in the mirror on the wall and groaned at her image. It's going to take weeks for me to get rid of this baby weight. Even more embarrassing, her boobs had gotten bigger now that they were full of breast milk, her white top unable to keep the upper half of her breasts contained. Ichigo said his Quincy friend had tailoring skills. Perhaps I should ask him for something more comfortable. The door opened up behind her again. Turning around, Halibel saw Ichigo and Chad enter the room. Not a minute later did Orihime come in with Halibel's subordinates. I trust my compatriots have been on their best behavior? She inquired. Orihime smiled and nodded. They have. I let them pass the time with my karaoke game. She left out the part where Kazuki soundproofed her apartment after Apache and Mila Rose got into an argument over said game. Chad could tell that a lot had happened to the two and turned to his best friend. Ichigo, what happened? You look pale. Well, Ichigo quietly relayed the same story he told Urahara, everyone gasping at the part where Aizen got involved. That's the score of it, Halibel said once her student finished. The facts are clear, we need to get stronger. All of us. I will teach Ichigo how to master his inner hollow. Girls, she turned to the Trace Bestia and gestured to Ichigo's friends. I want to train Orihime and Chad. Actually, Halibel, Orihime interjected. Rukia asked me to train with her. Rukia, both Chad and Ichigo questioned. Yeah, she said that she got her brother's permission to train with me in the Soul Society. Very well then, Halibel nodded. Thinking about it, she figured that Orihime would do better being trained by a friend rather than three hollows she just met. What about your Quincy friend? She asked Ichigo. You said that he lost his powers in the Soul Society. Might your friend with the hat find a way to restore them like he did yours? Ichigo shrugged. I don't know. I'd ask, but I don't think Ryu would like the idea having a Soul Reaper help him. She shook her head. That's too bad. His pride was what undid him in the Soul Society. One would think he'd learn, she said. Regardless, she turned back to the Trace Bestia. All right then, you'll be training just Chad then. To Ichigo and Orihime's amusement, they saw Chad blush from the look the three beautiful women were giving him. Mila Rose grinned from ear to ear. The three of us with this hunk. This should be fun. Don't break him, Halibel told them with a stern look. Sung Sun nodded loyally. Don't worry, Master Halibel. I'll make sure these two don't hurt him much. Both Apache and Mila Rose pulled Chad out of the room, Sung Sun chuckling behind them. Orihime quickly left as well to gather her things before she left with Rukia. Nodding at each other, Ichigo and Halibel left the room and headed for Kazuki's underground chamber. At this point, it didn't really surprise Ichigo to find the four captains whom the head captain left behind waiting for them. Byakuya scowled as he took in the sight of the pregnant Halibel. I assume this is the Arrancar. I am Tier Halibel, the number 3 Espada, Halibel introduced herself. Byakuya, Ichigo quickly said, putting himself between Halibel and the captains. Why are you guys here? He blinked when he noticed another pair who was among them. Kenpachi, what are you doing here? He remembered him leaving with the others. The spiky-haired man grinned. Are you kidding? I wouldn't miss this. His sword, already drawn, dragged along the ground. There's no way I can resist fighting you again. And if you get even stronger then all the better. Sitting on a rock, Soy Fan spoke. Have you forgotten, boy? Our orders were to keep an eye on you and this thing, she spat, not wanting to acknowledge the Arrancar. The quiet Captain Unohana walked up to the teen. Kazuki Urahara informed us of what you and Halibel intend on doing. You're attempting to control your hollow, correct? That is what we intend, Halibel said, feeling wary of the woman. She seemed pleasant and kind, but she knew that Aizen seemed pleasant and kind at one point and looked where it got the Soul Reapers. She turned to Byakuya. You witnessed the power of Ichigo's inner hollow, have you not? Certainly you must see the necessity of Ichigo learning to control it if he's to have a chance of helping you fight Aizen's army. Byakuya recalled his fight with Ichigo on the Sokyoku Hill and narrowed his eyes. Yes, his inner demon is powerful. However, even though Ichigo was able to quell it at the time, I could tell that its power was volatile. If he holofees and loses control, he could run rampant. He will not lose control, Halibel adamantly defended. I won't let him run rampant. Soy Fan raised an eyebrow. What can you do? You've got a bun in the oven, so what's the point? Before anyone could blink, Halibel disappeared. Soy Fan found herself with the espada in front of her, Halibel's sword drawn and pointed right at her. The woman tensed in shock, her hand instinctively reaching for Tsuzumaki as her eyes widened with alarm. Halibel glared down at the woman. Don't think that because I'm with child that I'm defenseless, she threatened. Lowering her sword, she sheathed it and walked back over to Ichigo. Back to the matter at hand, she told Byakuya, I intend on teaching Ichigo to control his hollow powers. Then the four of us will watch over the two of you, Byakuya said. He looked over at Ichigo. Ichigo, you and your friend are free to do as you please. But a warning, if it appears that things are going to get out of hand, we will step in. Step in, yes. If you cannot control your inner hollow and become a certain threat, we will put you down. Both of you. Chapter 25, Kazuki's Underground Chamber. Halibel led Ichigo away from the Soul Reapers. He looked back and saw the 5 captains, eyes fixed squarely on him. Ichigo couldn't help but feel worried by Byakuya's threat. If the captains decided to make good on their promise, Ichigo didn't know if he and Halibel could take them. Not when Ichigo was struggling with his hollow and Halibel on the verge of giving birth. Ignore them, Halibel said without even turning her head. Let them watch, it makes no difference. Right, Ichigo smiled at Halibel's bravery, remembering why he loved her so dearly. Even in the face of such danger, she was willing to meet it head-on. She was putting herself at dangerous risk with all of this, and yet she was determined to help Ichigo see this through to the end. Ichigo squeezed her hand gently in response, feeling braver just being in the espada's presence. Once they were far enough away from the Soul Reapers, Halibel stopped and turned around. All right, Ichigo, it's time we got started. What exactly am I supposed to do? Halibel crossed her arms and gave it some more thought. She'd contemplated on this for a while, ever since Ichigo had confessed his fears about his inner hollow. Tilting her head back, she thought about Aizen's experiments and tried to remember anything that could have been crucial. After a moment's reflection, Halibel decided on their course of action. Ichigo, when you were defeated by Kenpachi Zaraki, Zangetsu manifested before you and drew you into your inner world, correct? Yeah, Ichigo nodded, remembering his shameful defeat after he'd underestimated Kenpachi. And in that inner world, you met with not only Zangetsu but the physical manifestation of your inner hollow, was that right? Ichigo again nodded. Unfolding her arms, the pregnant Halibel flexed her hands. Very well then, I shall send you into your inner world. Rendering you unconscious should be enough to send you there. When you get there you must face your inner hollow. While you're doing so, you'll no doubt holofee here in the real world since you'll no longer be able to contain him. I will keep you occupied for the time being while you're dealing with it. What should I do? Am I supposed to beat him? He asked, remembering how he forced Zangetsu into submission when he had to obtain Bankai. To his surprise, Halibel shook her head and pointed to the watching captains. That is a Soul Reaper's way of thinking. Put whatever Rukia and the other Soul Reapers have said out of your mind. You're more than just a Soul Reaper. She could sense the captains watching become incensed by her words but paid them no mind. Okay, but what will happen to you if I holofee? I might hurt you, or worse. His eyes flickered over to the captains and his fear grew. Putting a finger to Ichigo's chin, Halibel turned him away to bring him back into focus. They are no concern to you and me. Remember, you defeated them once. You can do it again if push comes to shove. And you won't be alone this time. And I'm prepared to fight you if your body goes wild. Ichigo sighed, Halibel's words giving him comfort. He took hold of her hand and squeezed it gently. Promise me you'll be okay? He asked. The blonde leaned forward and pressed her forehead against Ichigo's, squeezing his hand back as she looked him in the eye. I promise, Ichigo, I will be okay. We will be okay. She put her hands on Ichigo's temples and concentrated. Good luck, Ichigo. With a surge of spirit energy directly to Ichigo's mind, she sent Ichigo into unconsciousness. He slumped forward before Halibel caught him and gently laid him down on the ground. She turned her head and addressed the watching captains and lieutenants. "You should step back," she called out. Renji looked over at his captain and became concerned. He didn't know what was going to happen, but he didn't want to come to blows with Ichigo again. "Captain, are we sure about this?" he asked. "We have our orders." Byakuya's tone was absolute, the man not even turning his head as he watched. His eyes were fixed on Halibel, scrutinizing every move the woman made. The head captain was clear. "Whatever happens, Renji, Ichigo is not to be trusted. The Hollow may say that Ichigo will be fine, but we cannot take her word." Yunohana came up from behind Renji, her lieutenant loyally flanking her. "I know that you care for him, Renji," she said with her gentle smile before her expression turned serious. "But we must prepare for the worst-case scenario. If Ichigo cannot control himself, we must act." A sudden shift in the air made all 8 Soul Reapers turn towards the boy in the Aaronkar. Halibel stiffened as she reached for her sword, knowing what was about to happen. Ichigo's head jerked up. Halibel braced herself as the white and red mask on Ichigo's face slowly started to form. Meanwhile, Ichigo's inner world, the familiar sideways cityscape, greeted Ichigo as he arrived in the realm of his soul. He wasn't surprised a bit when he saw who was waiting for him. "Hey there, King," Ichigo's hollow greeted him from atop an adjacent building, sitting on the side while hefting his Zanpakuto on his back. "Long time no see." Ichigo looked around and saw no sign of the man in black, his Zanpakuto. "Where's Zangetsu?" he asked. "Zangetsu?" Ogichi asked before standing up. He reached behind him and grabbed the black-clothed blade on his back. "You mean this?" The wrappings fell from the weapon to reveal a white Zangetsu. Ichigo stiffened but quickly relaxed. He took a step back when Ogichi jumped onto his building, wary of the creature. "You have a Zangetsu blade." He thought about it and nodded. "I guess that makes sense." Ogichi looked at the boy with a strange look, like he didn't know what to make of Ichigo. "What's the matter? Aren't you going to draw your sword?" "I'm not here to fight you," Ichigo told him. "Really? How strange," Ogichi said before his white lips twisted into a cruel sneer. "Because I want to fight you, you weakling." With a burst of speed, Ogichi darted towards Ichigo and attacked him, forcing Ichigo to jump back and draw Zangetsu. "You don't deserve this power, Ichigo," the hollow scornfully shouted. When Ichigo jumped into the air to avoid him, Ogichi leapt up and met him mid-air, their swords colliding. "You don't deserve this power. And you don't deserve her." Meanwhile, Halibel readied herself as Ichigo rose to his feet, the mask on his face growing. The captains and lieutenants watching, plus Kazuki and Yoruichi who'd arrived minutes ago to observe, all watched in trepidation when Ichigo lurched backwards and a hole opened up in his chest. "He's hollowfying," Renji gasped in horror. "Captain, we need to help him." "You will stand down, Renji," Byakuya told his adjutant. "He's right, Renji." The redhead turned to Kazuki. "Right now we must put our faith in Halibel." While the captains watched, Halibel kept her vigilance as Ichigo hollowfeed in front of her. She watched as Ichigo slowly transformed, his body becoming big and bulky, a tail crashing into the ground behind him. "Ichigo," she started before shaking her head. "No, you're the one who appeared when Barragan attacked me." "Grr," the beast growled. It looked down at Halibel's pregnant belly. "That's right," Halibel put a hand on her stomach. "This isn't just Ichigo's baby. It's yours too." The captains all stared in disbelief when Halibel sheathed her sword. "You won't harm me, and you won't hurt it." The hollow towered over Halibel, standing silent for a tense minute as it locked eyes with her. Just when everyone wondered if Halibel's words had pacified it, the hollow lunged for Halibel. Meanwhile, Ichigo's inner world, "Stop playing defense," Ogichi shouted as he pressed his attack. "Be serious." "I am," Ichigo said, strangely calm. He jumped back and dodged Ogichi's slash and lowered his guard. "I'm not going to fight you." "Why not? You're here for my power, aren't you? Even if I did beat you here and now, you wouldn't let me control your power." "Not fully," Ichigo said, having come to understand his hollow during his time recovering from Barragan's beating. He'd had a lot to think about and understood what Halibel meant when she said not to think of this matter like a soul reaper. The black and white figures circled each other. As the hollow glowered at him, Ichigo looked up at the sky, thinking about what happened during the fight with Barragan. "I know what you are," he said. I'm you. The real you, Ogichi grinned. Yeah, you are, Ichigo agreed. He tightened his grip on Zangetsu and pointed it at the hollow. You or me? Yeah, and I'm better than you'll ever be. The hollow's angry glare intensified. What makes you think I'll share my power with a king like you? Because you're me, Ichigo insisted. And you love Halibel too. When he saw the hollow blink in surprise he smiled. You took control of me when Barragan threatened her and the baby. And when you could have attacked Barragan you chose to shield her from his Sero. You love her just as much as I do. Ogichi lowered his sword and his expression softened. Maybe I do, you gotta admit, the chick's got an impressive set of knockers, he playfully chuckled before his expression turned serious again. But so what? Even with my power you can't protect them. Maybe I can't. Ichigo stepped forward and held out his hand. But we can. Together. Soul Reaper and Hollow stared at each other, each not sure about the other. Shaking his head, Ogichi chuckled. You're really something, you know. He sheathed his sword and walked over to Ichigo. But you're wrong about one thing. What? It isn't the woman and her kid I wanted to protect. Without them, you'd fall apart. What I really wanted to protect, Ogichi gave an honest smile. Was you. Then he took hold of Ichigo's hand. And black and white became one. Meanwhile, the Soul Reapers all stared, not knowing what to make of the scene in front of them. The obese lieutenant, Omaeda, turned to Soy Fan. Captain, what are we looking at? Staring at the scene with disgusted eyes, Soy Fan scowled hard. I don't know but I hate it. Ooh, Ichigo, that tickles. Chihi. Renji, feeling uncomfortable, glanced over at Byakuya, who had the same level of disgust as Soy Fan on his face. Should we do something? He saw Aizen turn away, clearly embarrassed by what they were watching while Unohana looked on amused. I do not want to get involved in this. It is revolting to watch as it is. Halibel sat in the large hollow's lap, giggling as the hollow lovingly tickled her, his clawed hands gently grabbing at her pregnant belly. Halibel raised her arm up and ran her hand through the mane of Ichigo's orange hair. She turned her head and moaned in contentment when Ichigo pressed the lips of his mask against her mask fragment, giving her a hollow kiss. That's right, Halibel lovingly sighed as she put her hands over Ichigo's. It's our baby. Soy Fan turned away, wanting to vomit from the sight of two hollows displaying affection. Disgusting, she spat before walking away. When she got far enough away from the group she let the pink in her cheeks show. Why can't Lady Yoruichi hold me like that? She grumbled jealously. Thank you for watching. If you enjoyed the video be sure to like, comment and subscribe as well as checking out the author on fanfiction.net.